All right, for the recording, welcome back. We are ACI Course 5, How Karma Works, Class 1, June 7th, 2024. Let's gather our minds here as we usually do. Please bring your attention to your breath until you hear from me again. Now bring to mind that being who for you is a manifestation of ultimate love, ultimate compassion, ultimate wisdom. And see them there with you just by way of your thinking of them. They are gazing at you with their unconditional love for you. Smiling at you with their holy great compassion. Their wisdom radiating from them. That beautiful golden glow encompassing you in its light. And then we hear them say, bring to mind someone you know who's hurting in some way. Feel how much you would like to be able to help them. Recognize how the worldly ways we try fall short. How wonderful it will be when we can also help them in some deep and ultimate way, a way through which they will go on to stop their distress forever. We're learning that that is possible, that will be possible. And so I invite you to grow that wish into a longing. And that longing into an intention. Then turn your mind back to that precious holy being. We know that they know what we need to know, what we need to learn yet, what we need to do yet to become one who can help this other in this deep and ultimate way. And so we ask them, please teach us that. And they are so happy that we've asked. Of course, they agree. Our gratitude arises. We want to offer them something exquisite. And so we think of the perfect world they are teaching us how to create. We imagine we can hold it in our hands, and we offer it to them, following it with our promise to practice what they teach us, using our refuge prayer. Here is the great earth, filled with fragrant incense and covered with a blanket of flowers. The great mountain, 4 lands, wearing the jewel of the sun and the moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamnirayatayami. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may all beings reach their total awakening for the benefit of every other. Okay. So what I'd like to do for this course is at the beginning of each class, right after our general, this usual opening, I would like to read to you the source of all my good. And if you have it memorized and you want to say it along with me, that's fine. But you're also welcome to just listen and recall and sit with what you understand about each verse and see if you can feel the flow of that lamrim. I want to use it this time to keep us in touch with the big picture of where we're trying to go as we're studying the details of how karma works. We're going into how karma works now because we just finished that course called The Proof of Future Lives that really was about those 5 qualities of a Buddha, that really was about the what it means to become Semar Girpa. Remember that term? A being who has turned correct. Weird English words. And in the process of that series of, I don't know, because of this we know that, because of this we know that, because of this we know that logic, underneath that we saw the eternal nature of our consciousness. And it's really, is that what we got out of class 4? And if we see the eternal nature of our own consciousness, and we see these are the 5 qualities of a Buddha, and one of them is that you turn correct, meaning you weren't, and now you are. Our question would be, How in the world do you do that? So the answer, like we all know, the punchline is karma. Karma's gonna make it happen. Technically not karma, merit. But the way merit works is identical to the way karma works. Merit is karma made with wisdom. So next comes like everything we need to know about karma, or almost everything. And actually, like stuff, there's still stuff in this course that I don't understand the significance of it. And I'll share with you that when we get there. And yet every piece of these courses is a piece of the puzzle of you becoming Buddha, right? Us becoming Buddha. So every piece is necessary and critical. So if we hold the big picture of source of all my good, it helps us keep our study of karma directed towards this goal so that we don't get lost in the details of it, so that we can use those details instead. So listen to source of all my good, please. Ready? The source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see that taking myself to them in the proper way is the very root of the path, and grant me then to serve and follow them with all my strength and reverence. Bless me first to realize that the excellent life of leisure I have found just this once is ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day. My body and the life in it are as fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon, and help me find sure knowledge that after I have died, the things I have done, the white or black, and what these deeds will bring to me, follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. Grant me then ever to be careful to stop the slightest wrong of the many wrongs we do, and try to carry out instead each and every good of the many that we may. Bless me to perceive all that's wrong with the seemingly good things of this life. I cannot get enough of them. They cannot be trusted. They are the door to every pain I have. Grant me then to strive instead for the happiness of freedom. Grant that these pure thoughts may lead me to be watchful and to recall what I should be doing. Grant me to give the greatest care to make the vows of morality the essence of my practice. They are the root of the Buddha's teachings. I have slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering life. Bless me to see that every living being, every one my own mother, has fallen into. Grant me then to practice the highest wish for enlightenment, to take upon myself the task of freeing them all. Bless me to see clearly that the wish itself is not enough, for if I am not well trained in the three moralities, I cannot become a Buddha. Grant me then a fierce resolve to master the vows for children of the victors. Grant that I may quickly gain the path where quietude and insight join together, one which quiets my mind from being distracted to wrong objects, the other which analyzes the perfect meaning in the correct way. Grant that once I have practiced well the path shared and become a vessel that is worthy, I enter with perfect ease the way of the diamond, highest of all ways, holiest door to come inside for the fortunate and good. Bless me to know with genuine certainty that when I have entered thus, the cause that gives me both the attainments is keeping my pledges and vows most pure. Grant that I may always keep them, even at the cost of my life. Bless me next to realize the crucial points of both the stages, the essence of the secret ways. Grant me then to practice as the holy ones have spoken, putting all my effort in and never leaving off the practice of the 4 times highest that there is. Bless me, grant me, that the spiritual guide who shows me this good road and all my true companions in this quest live long and fruitful lives. Bless and grant me that the rain of obstacles, the things within me and outside me that could stop me now, stop and end forever. In all my lives, may I never live apart from my perfect lamas. May I bask in the glory of the Dharma. May I fulfill perfectly every good quality of every level and path, and reach then quickly the place where I become myself, the one who holds the diamond. All right. So for the study of karma, we go to the Abhidharma explanation. We've learned that there are 5 great books within the Buddhist lexicon. And those 5 books make up the curriculum of the monastic study, the Tibetan Gelugpa monastic study, which is what we're studying. And of those 5 great books, we've already been introduced to lower and higher madhyamika, middle way. We've been introduced to the sutra school, logic school. If we've been following Geshe Michael at all, we also have some introduction to mind-only school. And it's interesting that apparently in the monastics curriculum, the boys enter the monasteries education at 7 years old, as I understand it. And they don't actually study Abhidharma until 15 years later. So like you're 22 or something before you get into this subject matter. I don't really understand. It doesn't make sense to me that the first level school of Buddhism that came about after Buddha, was teaching and left, what came into being was what's called Abhidharma school. Geshe Michael pokes fun at it. He says it's just so boring because it's all the details about all existing things and how they're all suffering. And you would think that the monastic training would start right at the bottom, at the beginning, and then go to the next and go to the next and go to the next and end with the highest, but they don't actually do that. And it's like, okay, fine, I'm going to go along with the program because I don't understand so much. But when you think about the evolution of the different schools in Buddhism, it would be because at some point the Abhidharma practitioner themselves would reach this state where they're going, well, this isn't enough, right? There's some limitation here. and their own work, their own practice, their own applying their thinking would lead them, up the different schools' understandings of what Buddha meant by no self-nature and profound dependence. So in the sense of the way the four schools are presented, Abhidharma first, Sutra level second, mind only third, and middle way fourth, it makes sense in terms of the progress of our practice. But then when we learn about it, we want to see what we need to do at the beginning. So they teach us middle way and then say, but you need to know these lower ways because our own mind our own being will be behaving according to the lower ways as we're aspiring to the higher way. And if we don't know how to recognize that, we won't know how to work with those mental afflictions at the level of the lower way to move us to the higher way. So regardless of all of that, when all of those schools practitioners are interested in the details of how karma works, apparently they all go to this one textbook, which is the main textbook for what came to be known as the Abhidharma school. So here's the word for your vocabulary, Abhidharma. In Tibetan, it's Chunungpa. I'll get to what it means in a minute. The Abhidharma school of Buddhism is not like USC, UCLA, but way of thinking also is called Vaibhashika. Vaibhashika means the detail lists. And they get that name because this whole Abhidharma topic is the topic that explains the details of all existing things. It's in there is the explanation about the 5 heaps, the 12 gateways, the 18, whatever they are, the 24 this is, the 32 that's, right? All this description of existence. And that made up Lord Buddha's first turning of the wheel, we understand, right? All these existing things, he's pointing them all out to us. And he says, and you know what? They're all suffering and the causes of suffering. And maybe there's a way to stop that cycle. So the Abhidharma system of thinking got written down at some point into a text that's now the root text for that school, called Abhidharma Kosha. And again, I'll get back to the meanings in a minute. Shunungpa Zu. And it was written by Master Vasubandhu, who is the Tibetans call him Lopon Yiknyen. Yiknyen, it's hard to say. Master Vasubandhu is an Indian Buddhist before Buddhism even went to Tibet. His dates were 350 AD in that time frame. We don't know specifically. So we remember Master Vasubandhu as the half-brother of Master Asanga. And the story was in that 350 AD time frame in India, the Buddhism was in some decline. And there was this nun, a good nun, It was hard to be a nun. It is hard to be a nun within the tradition of Buddhism. And she was an advanced nun, and she had this clairvoyant vision that if she had two sons, one by a king and one by a Brahmin, that those two men would go on to revive Buddhism in India. So no doubt at great personal expense, she disrobed, managed to have these two children, taught those children, and then, sent them on to great teachers, and they did become great masters themselves. And between the two of them, they wrote most of the textbooks that are the basis for the Tibetan monastic training, used even now. So Master Vasubandhu, he saw that the Abhidharma practitioners of his day were missing something in their understanding. And so he set about to compile the 7 main texts of Buddhism all into one, not meaning photocopy them and paste them into his book, but meaning take the material of each of those 7 main texts and put them all into like an encyclopedia of the existing teaching, the 7 main books that existed at the time of Master Vasubandhu. So those 7 books, as I understand it, were the first 7 books that were written down by the main disciples of Lord Buddha after he withdrew. So, Buddha never wrote down anything. He didn't have teaching notes. He didn't leave anything behind. And then when he's gone, the students go, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And one says, well, I remember this teaching, right? And I'll write it down. And I remember this one, and I remember that one. Apparently there were 7 of them. And those got written. But, not everybody knew how to read in those days. And you had to carve it. So it's not like you could make a bunch of copies. And so Master Vasubandhu managed to gather 7 of these 7 texts, and write this. I hesitate to call it a summary, but kind of like that. And then over the years, those 7 have disappeared. So this Abhidharma Kosha is the closest thing we have to those early explanations of Buddhism. So in that text, the Abhidharma Kosha, well, I'll get into it later. So the Abhidharma Kosha is the main text we're using to study for this course, but only one chapter. Chapter 4 is the chapter on karma. And within that chapter on karma, we're going to study these 10 different subject matters within how karma works. In class 1, this one, we'll learn what the different meanings of Abhidharma. Then class 2, we'll learn the basic kinds of karma. Class 3, we'll look at what constitutes good and bad karma, meaning we'll look at ethics, this thing called ethics. Class 4, we'll talk about karmic results, and that class may need some extra time. And if it does, we'll figure out how to do it. There's a lot in the study of karmic results. Class 5 is a discussion about how karma is carried in our minds. Now, the Abhidharma Kosha does not talk about that too much. And so Geshe Michael chose to go to a mind-only text that was written by Tsongkhapa, much later, a time frame, called the Gomba Rapsal, the Illumination of True Thought, for this explanation of how karma is carried in our mind. It's a mind-only school explanation. Then in class 6, we'll look at the relationship, the interrelationship between karma and emptiness, which is, really the most important piece, is to understand how those two are two sides of a coin, right? How they're married, how they always happen. One shows the other. Class 7, we'll talk about what's called the karmic path of action, which we all know as the 4 steps, or even the 4x4. But we'll talk about it from the traditional perspective. Class 8 is a discussion about our root of virtue and how we would destroy it so that we know how to avoid doing that. Class 9 is about immediate misdeeds and schisms, again, so that we know to avoid those. And class 10 is a discussion about how to make our karma more powerful. Then class 11, as you know, is the review, where you will teach me how karma works. Okay. Excuse me. Yeah. Okay. So let's look at the vocabulary. Abhidharma, that word is Sanskrit. Shu Nungpa is the Tibetan. Abhidharma is the subject matter of the school of Buddhist thought called Vaibhashika, detailless. So Abhidharma is this subject matter. Abhi, that the ABHI part of that word, it means approaching, like going up to, coming up to something, going up to something. And it has this connotation of the thing is in front of you, but also it has the connotation that it's above you. So you can think of it as, going from here to there, but then also think of it as going from here to there, and it's a little uphill. But then also think of it in terms of what's up the hill is a holy place, right? A temple or a stupa or something, right? So you're approaching this higher thing. So the Abhi has that connotation of going towards something, but also going towards something that's higher. Then, and that's Nungpa in Tibetan. Dharma, Chu in Tibetan. We know that word as the Buddha's teachings, but technically the word dharma comes from the root dur, dhr. I know nothing about Sanskrit roots. I'm just parroting what Geshe Michael has taught. The Sanskrit root dur means to hold, in the sense of to hold an identity. And so dharma really means something that holds an identity, meaning any existing thing. So an existing thing or any existing thing is a dharma. So our computers are dharma. Our friend the pen is a dharma. The wall is a dharma. Whether you're interested in this class or bored with this class is a dharma, right? Every existing thing is a dharma. So abhidharma means like approaching this highest thing. The subject matter called approaching the highest thing. So in the early Buddhist thought and practice, what would you anticipate is being meant by the highest thing? What is it that the Abhidharmists were trying to approach as their highest object, would you think?
Nirvana?
Nirvana, exactly. Exactly. So the subject matter of Abhidharma is how to approach nirvana. And what would we need in our travel to that high state? We need the wisdom of selflessness. So in the lower schools, they don't use the term emptiness for the no self nature of those dharmas. They use the term selflessness. And the main selflessness that they are working with is their own personal selflessness, the no self nature. When I hear myself say no self, I can still feel my mind's reaction be no self at all. And so in my own like vocabulary with myself, it's like, well, how can I say that in a way that keeps me in the middle way? And so I use the term the no self nature of me, the no self nature of things, because it helps me from saying, oh, no self means nothing, to no self means no specific thing, undifferentiated, none undifferentiated as yet, all potential. But the error in that, I notice, is it still leaves me thinking it's some positive thing, some presence versus an absence. So I'm just telling you how I'm using vocabulary and why to help you watch your mind as it reacts to this term selflessness. So if I understand correctly, an Abhidharma practitioner can and will have an experience, a direct experience of selflessness at some point. They'll reach their Tonglam and they'll come out of it with a deep new realization about the true nature of themselves and their world that will change them forever. But their interpretation of it won't be the same. It won't have the same kind of impact that the same experience by someone whose mind is imbued with bodhicitta, we've heard that term before, has and comes out of it. So the emptiness is the same, no matter who experiences it. But when you come out of that experience, your interpretation of the experience is different according to what you knew about it going in. Does that make sense? So Abhidharma's level goes into their meditation on emptiness, selflessness, with the goal of reaching nirvana. And so when they come out of it and they're on their path of habituation, it's with the goal to reaching nirvana. To reach nirvana, we apply our understanding, like what we now know about selflessness, to our behavior in order to stop our mental afflictions and seeds for more. So we change our behavior because now we understand so critically how it is that our behavior creates our future circumstances and where our mental afflictions really come from. So Abhidharma, this approaching the highest thing subject matter, is also referring to the wisdom that we need to reach in order to get to that nirvana that we're approaching. So the term Abhidharma also refers to this wisdom of selflessness. It's not in the word at all, the wisdom of selflessness, but the approaching the highest thing holds within it this, what we have to do to get there. You following me? So Abhidharma is the subject matter. Abhidharma Kosha is the name of the text about that subject matter. And the term Kosha in Tibetan, Z, means treasury, treasure house, like Fort Knox, where all the United States gold is kept, they say. Like the room the king had all his treasures in is the treasury. The Abhidharma Kosha text is called the treasury because it's the compilation of those 7 precious textbooks that were existing during Master Vasubandhu's time, but are no longer. So it's the room. That text is the room of all those 7, the meat of all those 7 textbooks, Abhidharma Kosha. The treasure house of higher knowledge is Geshe-la's translation of Abhidharma Kosha. Treasure house of higher knowledge. So now, Master Vasubandhu wrote this treasure house of higher knowledge, which we would then think, well, that must mean he was a detailist. But later, he wrote books on mind-only school also, in which he points out the limitations of Vaibhashika school. So we find, no, he wasn't Vaibhashika, or maybe he started there and grew beyond, I hope. But their party line is Master Vasubandhu saw that the Vaibhashikas of the time needed to understand their own subject matter better. And that's why he wrote the Abhidharma Kosha. From a higher perspective, he put together what would help those of a more beginner perspective. So just for like completion, we recall that there are 4 main schools of Buddhism in India, not to be confused with the 4 sects of Tibetan Buddhism. So Vaibhashika is the detailist. It was the beginning level school. Sautrantika, I think that R shouldn't be there. Sautrantika, no, it is Sautrantika. is the next level called sutras. Called sutras because this group of practitioners said, we want to study from the sutras directly, and we'll figure out what they mean. But it's a level of thinking that goes a little bit higher, a little bit deeper about the ramifications of these all existing things that are suffering. Then comes Chittamatra or Yogacharya, known as mind only school, which doesn't believe there's nothing but mind, which goes higher, deeper yet. And then we reach middle way, which has 2 levels, as we've understood. So now in these 4 schools, the first 2 practitioners are focused on reaching nirvana. Their own personal nirvana is what they perceive is the highest thing that they can achieve. The highest thing that anybody can achieve is nirvana. And then somewhere along the way, right, as we work with the system from that level, something shifts in us, whether in that lifetime or some later lifetime, and we come to recognize, wow, if I can reach nirvana, so can everybody. And what good would it be for me to be in nirvana and everybody I know left in samsaric world? That's not right. Like, I want everybody to reach nirvana. And that's the building step to, oh my gosh, I need to become a Buddha to be able to do that. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can become a Buddha. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Right. And we move to the Mahayana, the higher vehicular capacity. Remember that term? So the first 2 schools are called Hinayana schools, not being derogatory, but just meaning have a lower vehicular capacity. Practitioners of Vaibhashika and Sautrantika are like VW vans. Practitioners of Chittamatra and Madhyamaka are like a train car. Like, so much more can be carried by a train car than by a VW van. Hinayana means VW van capacity. My personal nirvana. Mahayana is huge train car capacity. I'm going to take everybody with me. And I'm going to reach Buddhahood so I can bring everybody there. Within the Tibetan tradition are the 4 SECTS sects of Buddhism, all of which are Mahayana. Nyingma is the earliest one. Sakya, Kagyu kind of came along at the same time. Gelugpa is the newest. Right? Started in the 1400s with Lama Tsongkhapa. So all of these are Mahayana. Why are we going there? We study them all because we're aspiring to live as middle way practitioners. But with every mental affliction, we have a natural reaction to that mental affliction, whether we act on it or not. And when we understand these schools from different levels of understanding karma and emptiness, we can recognize in our own mind, oh, in this situation, I can apply the Vaibhashika. I mean, not in these many words, but I can be keenly aware of the gross and subtle impermanence going on right now, and so I can be less reactive, or I can be more aware of how things come from causes and they aren't the causes that it looks like, and so I can be less reactive. Or I can be more aware, it's like, whoa, this is a mental image unique to me, and so I can be less reactive. We'll find ourselves moving in between these different levels of understanding of karma and emptiness in our practice life when we understand those schools as different perspectives better. It's not that we leave one behind when we move to the next. It's that it grows, right, into this ability to respond to ourselves and our world in this more all-inclusive way as we get more and more familiar with all four schools. And it's hard when we're first learning, because it sounds like, oh, there's a group of people that think like this, and there are a group of people that think like that, and they're trying to get to their goal from their own school. And it's not really like that. It's more our own mind stages that we go through. And we'll be in this school for a while, and then we'll go up, but then we'll have a bad day and we'll be back down, not even in a Buddhist school. So through the course of our ACI, we're going to learn them all, so that we can negotiate that dance with greater awareness. All right. You know what? Let's take a break here, since it's almost time anyway, and we'll get into the commentary. So I will stop share so I can pause recording. Pause recording. There we go. Okay. Now, Abhidharma Kosha, the text, it has been translated into English. It's like a 4 or 5 volume book. And it's one of those books where if you're in the right frame of mind, you can open it up and read it. And man, it's so amazing. And then you go back to it another day and open and read the same passage. And it's like, is that even English? Like, just completely incomprehensible. It's like written in code, Geshe-la always says. It's just so difficult. And it would be taught, the teacher would teach it to the students. It means this, it means that, it means this, and go through it page by page. And then somewhere along the line, somebody says, man, this needs to be written down. You know, it takes a long time for the teacher to teach the student. And if the student doesn't teach somebody else, right, at some point it's going to get lost. The commentary about it's going to get lost. And so along the way, a man named Gelwa Gendon Drup, he writes a commentary to the Abhidharma Kosha, probably based on the teaching he received from his teacher. So who was Gelwa Gendon Drup's teacher? It was Jetsun Kappa. Gelwa Gendon Drup is one of Jetsun Kappa's main disciples, not the two, but a very close third. And he actually went on to be given the title, the first Dalai Lama. So that's the kind of student he was. he ended up getting recognized, right? His reincarnation recognized as a manifestation of Chenrezig. So Gelwagenden Drup, his dates are 1391 to 1474, one of the main students of Jetsun He writes a commentary on Abhidharma Kosha called Tarlam Selje. Tarlam means path to liberation, path to freedom. Lam means path, both in the sense of how to get there and in the sense of the realization, right? What becomes real for me. Then Tar, as in Tara, Lady of Liberation. So it means liberation or freedom. Tarlam. Then Selje means to shine the light. So the illumination, where is it? Sorry. Illumination of the path to freedom is the name of this commentary to Abhidharma Kosha. And we're studying from that. It will make up your reading. So your reading is not the Abhidharma Kosha, it's Tarlam Selje, a commentary about it. Now, there are two kinds of Abhidharma. So Abhidharma is the subject matter, right? Approaching the highest thing, meaning the wisdom we need to reach nirvana. There are two forms of that. They are called Sherab and Chedong. Chedong, it's a hard word to say. When I hear Geshe Michael say it, it sounds like it's spelled like this. Sounds like that. But that's a different word. So it's Chedong. Anyway, Sherab means wisdom. So of these two knowledges that are within the Abhidharma subject matter, we have higher knowledge, Sherab, the wisdom, and we have the Chedongs, which is the accessories to wisdom. So the term Chedong is the term that they would use for things that are like dragged along behind. Geshe said, you know how in the olden days, they would tie cans to the bumper of the car of the newly married couple, and when they drive off, they would make all this noise. So Chedong means those cans tied to the bumper of the car, things that are dragged along behind or come along behind. So these two kinds of Abhidharma, one is the higher knowledge, and the other is those that follow along behind, the accessories. But curiously, that Sherab refers to the wisdom that's gained, that is gained in the three unstained paths, and Chedong is the knowledge gained in the two stained paths. So what do I mean by that? I'm talking about the 5 paths to our goal. Mahayana says the 5 paths to our Buddhahood. Abhidharma would say the 5 paths to nirvana. 3 of those paths are called unstained and 2 are called stained. So those 5 paths we know: the path of accumulation, the path of preparation, the path of seeing, the path of habituation, the path of no more learning. So of those 5, which are stained and which are unstained? What do I mean by stained? Stained means still involved with mental afflictions. That means still involved in the belief in self-natures, belief in self-existence. So which 3 are no longer involved in beliefs in self-existence. It has to be the Tonglam path of habituation and path of no more seeing, right? Or no more learning. It's not that once you've reached your path of seeing, you have no more ignorance. We know that. But everything that you do from there on out is about burning away all the ignorance and all the mental afflictions that are a result of ignorance. So although you are still perceiving yourselves in a very stained world and still perceiving your own being as a very stained being, because you don't believe it anymore, because of your path of seeing, the whole system is now called unstained. The wisdom you gain at your path of seeing is used to grow the wisdoms, that wisdom, through its path of habituation to its nirvana, what would be called the path of no more learning for an Abhidharmis. So this higher knowledge version, Sherab, is that wisdom growing in the mind of a being who's Tonglam and on. Chedong has to do with the learning that we accumulate on the two stained paths, which is our path of preparation and the path of accumulation and the path of preparation. So path of accumulation is where our renunciation is growing, meaning like we're getting sicker and sicker and sicker of being broken. And the path of accumulation, that sense of there's something wrong with this picture and I've got to fix it and I've got to learn how to fix it and it can be fixed. All of that's happening in path of accumulation. Then the goodness of our struggle and our search and our disappointment and our pain actually leads us, to some event where we hear something like the pen thing that triggers something in us that's like, oh my gosh, there's a key here. Like maybe we don't see it fully at that point, but something hooks our heart. And then we start studying intensely, right? Working with it, chewing on it, learning to meditate, path of preparation, where what we're preparing is to reach those three unstained paths. We're preparing for that direct experience of, in this school, selflessness, the no self nature of me and all things. So really these accessories to higher knowledge come first. I don't know why they call it, they tag along behind. You can figure that out. When you get a clue, you let me know. So within the subject matter, Abhidharma is Sherab and Jedon. Long explanation for those two words. So let me ask you then, within this division of Sherab and Jedong, where do you figure the accumulating goodness of our vowed morality lie? Are they in Sherab or are they in Jedong?
Should be J-Strong, I think.
Jedong, right. Where are our learning how to meditate? Clue, Jedong, right? Accessories to knowledge. Where is our wisdom gained from seeing emptiness directly.
Correct.
Sure.
Sharam, right, got it. How do we get there? By doing our
Wisdom
Qigong,
Kshetra.
right? So they come first. Now, within the Qigong, there's two divisions of things that are accessories to knowledge, that bring us to that knowledge. There are the accessories to knowledge called nominal accessories to knowledge, nominal, and there's real accessories to knowledge. Nominal accessories to knowledge refer to the books, the audios, the videos, right? The teachings that we can hold and read and listen to and study. They're called nominal. And usually we hear the word nominal. And from higher school, we go, oh, in name only. And my own mind goes, in name only, oh, so they're not real. But they are real because they're nominal in highest school, right? Our nominalizing is what makes things real. At this level, when we're speaking nominal accessories to knowledge, we mean nominal in the ordinary sense, meaning in name only. The book that we read is not the wisdom. The wisdom is something in our own mind. The book's not, right? You don't stick the book on your face and push it into your brain to get the knowledge. You read the book, you think about it, you meditate it, and then you get the knowledge from your study. So the book is the accessory to knowledge in name only, right? Because it's not the wisdom, but it's something through which we can get there. The real accessory to wisdom, to knowledge, is the state of mind that results from reading that book, listening to those, right? Thinking about them, contemplating, coming to some new understanding, whether it's a full-on realization or not, right? Every new understanding that we get from every class we hear is all adding to your accessories to knowledge. Isn't that nice to know? We use all of those accessories to knowledge to help us get a more and more clear intellectual understanding of selflessness, in order to use that intellectual understanding to help us choose our behavior in a wiser way, in order to grow the goodness that will bring about that direct experience, that when we come out of it, we then have the sharam, the higher knowledge. Okay, so our Jedongs are not like just accessories, you know, that you put on your car. They're very, very critical. Foundational understandings that we need in order to grow our sharam. Geshe-la's example here is if we know that putting our hand in the fire will burn us, and we don't want to get burnt, then we cannot put our hand in the fire. It's not that just we won't, it's we really can't do it. And if we do put our hand in the fire, it means either we didn't really believe it would burn me, or I didn't really not want to get burned, or I stopped knowing that fire could burn me. Like that's the only three possibilities. And we go, well, that's a like really absurd example. But Geshe-la says, no, but we do it all the time. When we yell back at somebody yelling at us, we are in one of those three states. We either don't believe fire burns, don't care that we're going to get burnt, or we forgot that fire burns when we yell back. It's a really powerful analogy. I have to cook it every time I hear myself say it. Like, why is yelling back at somebody like forgetting that fire can burn me? But we know the punchline well enough, right? By yelling back at somebody, we just made multiple new getting yelled at experiences in our future. And we must have forgotten that that's true in order to let ourselves do it, or to be even inclined to do it, not just let ourselves do it. We can't. Okay. We get upset when something doesn't go our way. The classical example is, you'll see it in your reading. It's going to say, we can't realize the scarecrow is not a man and think it is a man at the same time. We can't know something's true nature and have a wrong belief about its true nature at the same time. Again, it seems so obvious, but if we have desire or aversion towards something, it means we're not understanding its true nature. And when we understand the bowl of ice cream's true nature, we can't misunderstand where the pleasure of the ice cream really comes from. And when we can't misunderstand where the pleasure of the ice cream really comes from, then we would automatically be offering it or sharing it or giving it away before we take the first bite. So, we have those. The refuge advices is to offer the first bite of everything to the holy lamas or to the Buddhas, and it's like, yeah, nice ritual. Okay, I'll honor that. But do you see why? Like they're training us to offer any pleasurable thing before we partake of it. And it's like, what? Just in your mind, offer? Yeah. If we want to perpetuate pleasant things, offer the first part of any pleasant thing. Anything you think is going to be pleasant, because it's not pleasant from its own side, right? Anything you anticipate is going to be pleasant, offer it first. If there's somebody there, like in the flesh, try to offer it to them first. It sounds so simple, but it's actually very difficult to do. And yet they plugged it in to the system right from refuge. It's pretty fun. All right. Geshe-la says, this is how the knowledge of selflessness becomes higher knowledge, wisdom, is when we are working with these accessories to knowledge, meaning our growing intellectual understanding and awareness of the no self nature of myself and my outer world. The only way to stop our negative habits and negative thoughts is to reach this actual realization of selflessness, meaning make it real for ourselves, meaning have that direct experience of it. All the study, meditation, practice changes, keeping our vows that we do is directed towards creating the goodness that will ripen as that direct experience. And doesn't matter how long it's going to take to get there, really. We're planting. And then one day, right? The right amount of sun, the right amount of rain, and boom, you're there. So now, in Abhidharma Kosha, the root text we're studying, it has 8 chapters. We're only going to study chapter 4, but Geshe Michael wants us to know the other 8. Chapter 1 is called the categories of existence, where it's describing like all existing things by way of all these different divisions. So you remember that chart that we have, all knowable things divided into changing things and unchanging things, divided into, it's like that, only in much greater detail, that whole chapter. It divides all of those existing things into stained and unstained. Now, recall that at this level, we are believing all of those things, they all exist. They have some quality of no self nature, meaning something we think is there that they don't actually have. But at this level of school, we are not talking about their existence or not. They exist. They're all out there. They have a quality of selflessness that allows them or makes them impermanent, dependent on causes, etc. But we're not talking whether they're there or not, the way highest middle school seems to be saying, but really isn't. Yes, Roxana.
Thank you, Lama. I just have a doubt. In categories of existence, in chapter number 1, are we still with the category of stained and unstained, or is it chapter 2?
No, chapter 1, he lays out all existing things and he points out the difference between stained existing things and unstained existing things.
Thank you, dear Lama. Thank you.
Now, the stained and unstained isn't from the thing. It's from the state of mind perceiving the thing, even in this lower school. So anything that we experience that has to do with, Geshe uses the word bad thoughts, wrong thoughts, is stained phenomenon. So when we have an experience that's unpleasant, and then we have a reaction to the unpleasant, and aversion, and from that reaction, we have an automatic, this is what I should do in this situation, right, to get it to stop. And what, maybe we even act on that. We've planted a seed in our mind for another unpleasant in which we habitually react in some similar negative way. And right, we perpetuate the cycle. We understand that. Same with desiring things. We have a wrong kind of desire, a mistaken kind of desire that makes us act in a mistaken way. And we then perpetuate a desire with a mistaken state of mind. That's what we mean by stained. And technically, for an ignorant being, like every moment of our day and night are stained, because every seed ripening is stained. it means stained with the misunderstanding of where things come from, stained by ignorance, stained by the great mistake. So when we say good, bad, wrong, right, we're meaning based on when we get the result of that deed, will it be pleasant or unpleasant? So bad, wrong, I'm going to try to use the term mistaken because it helps me not, go to that judgment place of, oh, I'm so bad, I'm never going to be able to do this right, but rather mistaken. So stained means mistaken by the belief in the thing and me having some self-nature. Unstained is on those few moments where we can really be aware that this is all karma's ripening. And so how I behave is going to create my future. That's like a squeeze of unstained going on there. Not fully unstained, of course, but we can start to accumulate less and less stain that will help us get to the point of unstained. Unstained meaning unstained by the mistaken view. Okay. So categories of existence chapter is pointing out all these different existing things and how we misperceive them. Then chapter 2 is about the powers. The powers means the description of our faculties of perception. How the I power engages an object and the I consciousness comes up with its information and reaction. In that chapter, it also goes into mental functions because, right, it's all a sequence. The I function does its thing. We become conscious of it. We have a mental function as a result. All of that is mental function. And then we have a reaction, usually mental affliction. Chapter 3 is called The Suffering World. It further describes the details of chapter 1 and 2 and how that elaborates into all the different realms of a suffering world. So it goes into the hell realms, hungry ghost realms, animal, human, form, formless, jealous God, etc. It describes Buddhist cosmology, even describes systems of measurement and describes time. Chapter 4 is the chapter on karma, describing where all that suffering comes from, where those suffering realms really come from. And it shows that all of those suffering realms don't come from some creator being. It comes from one's own karma and nothing else. Then chapter 5 is a chapter called Mental Afflictions. And it comes next because mental afflictions is where karma comes from. Mental afflictions are what make us behave in the way that we do that plants the seeds that is our karma. The mental afflictions then are karma ripening and we perpetuate the cycle. So it describes how an advanced practitioner uses wisdom to stop the cycle. Mental afflictions describes how our negative thoughts motivates our negative deeds. Chapter 5. Chapter 6 is called The Person and the Path. This chapter talks about how to stop those mental afflictions and how the practitioner uses the path to gain their wisdom, and then how they use that wisdom that they gain to stop the cycle. Chapter 7 is called Wisdom, Yeshe, which is more detail on the wisdom that leads to freedom. Chapter 8 is called Balanced Meditation, but here it's describing a Buddha's state of mind, a Buddha's knowledge, which is balanced between dullness and agitation, balanced between things exist the way they look or they don't exist at all, right? Balanced. No, bright, attentive, focus, alert, right? Loving. And describes this as the result of gaining the wisdom of the first 7 chapters. So it's curious, Geshe clearly said chapter 8 is describing a Buddha's knowledge, but we said the practitioner of Abhidharma is only shooting for nirvana. And so it's like, my guess is Master Vasubandhu, who is a higher practitioner, puts this chapter into Abhidharma Kosha to plant these little seeds in the minds of beings who don't believe that becoming Buddha is my personal goal, to plant these seeds for later, right? That in fact, you're already growing your ability to reach Buddhahood, even if you think you're only going for nirvana. It's kind of skillful. All right. So the last thing for class today is that when we pick up a book to read, in the Buddhist tradition, it says one should look for these 4 factors, the 4 requirements of a book worthy to spend your time on. They call it the 4 requirements for a Buddhist book. A book could be written by a Buddhist. A book could be written about Buddhism. And if it doesn't have these 4 qualities or 4 factors, it's not really a Buddhist book. And these 4, we've heard them before: Juja, Gupa, Nigyu, and Drowa. Juja means it's subject matter, meaning the subject matter should be meaningful. So a Buddhist book, a proper Buddhist book, will have a subject matter that's meaningful. And your homework question says, what are the 4 requirements of a Buddhist book, and what are they in the Abhidharma Kosha? So her meaningful subject matter of Abhidharma Kosha is the wisdom which understands stained and unstained object. The wisdom that understands how to stop our suffering is the purposeful subject matter of the Abhidharma Kosha. The second quality, Gupa, means the purpose of the book should be meaningful. Subject matter and excuse me a minute. Thank you. Purpose. Meaningful purpose, Gupa. In Abhidharma Kosha, the purpose is to plant the seeds of wisdom in the reader's mind. The seeds of wisdom means the ability to distinguish between stained and unstained things. What is suffering and what is not suffering? Nigyu means an ultimate goal. The ultimate goal of the book needs to be meaningful. purposeful. And the purpose, the meaningful ultimate goal of Abhidharma Kosha is at minimum how to reach nirvana. So Geshe-la says technically the ultimate goal of any Buddhist book should at least be how to reach nirvana. He says, otherwise you're wasting your time. Oh no, it would make a debate. Like if some text were, its ultimate goal was helping you reach shamatha, it doesn't specifically mention nirvana. Does that mean it's not a meaningful thing to spend your time on? And I guess his argument would be if it doesn't point out the connection between shamatha and the end of suffering, it would be meaningless to study shamatha. Right? So then lastly, drowa means the relationship. There needs to be some relationship between the subject matter, the purpose, and the ultimate goal in order for this book to be worth spending your time on. Meaning that studying the subject matter for the purpose of reaching nirvana, it will happen, right? We will reach nirvana as a result. Some relationship between those three. So for Abhidharma Kosha, to reach nirvana, we must get the wisdom of knowing what helps us reach it and what hinders us from reaching it, right? The difference between unstained and stained paths. And to get to this wisdom, we can study and practice what this book has to teach us so that we can develop it. So Geshe-la used this to point out, like to advertise to increase our interest in reading the readings, which we're supposed to do before we pick up any text. It's like, check it out. Is this worth my time? I have to admit, I don't always consciously apply these things. Okay, so that completes our class 1. Again, I have some few extra minutes. I'm going to put them in the bank for later. And we are launched into our study of karma and how karma works. I really love this class. It's got a lot of meat in it that we'll come back to again and again and again. And it's fun to add it to our basket that we're filling of understanding. So remember that person we wanted to be able to help? We learned a lot, whether we think so or not, that we will use to help them in that deep and ultimate way someday. And that's a great, great goodness. And so please be happy with yourself. And think of this goodness like a beautiful glowing gemstone that you can hold in your hands. Recall your own precious holy being. See how happy they are with you. Grow your gratitude to them. your reliance upon them. Ask them to please stay close, to continue to guide you, help you, inspire you. And then offer them this gemstone of goodness. See them accept it and bless it. And they carry it with them right back into your heart. See them there, feel them there. Their love, their compassion, their wisdom. It feels so good, we want to keep it forever. And so we know to share it by the power of the goodness that we've just done. May all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom, and thus gain the two ultimate bodies that merit and wisdom may. So use those 3 long exhales to share this goodness with that one person. To share it with everyone you love. To share it with every being you've ever seen or heard of. See them all filled with happiness, filled with loving kindness, filled with wisdom. And may it be so. All right. Thank you, my dears.
you.